Today we're back in the Loch Earn in Trossachs National Park, and we're going to be exploring a wonderful new spot that we found, including the amazing historical Neish Island, which is a crannog that had a castle on it and some great history from the 1600s. So let's see what we find in the water. The first find of the day is this lovely old mooring with a rusty chain completely fused together. We see a few bottlenecks. Then we come across a lovely Carton's HP sauce. It really is in quite impeccable condition despite being in a kind of rocky, sandy area that's quite wavy most of the time. Erin and I start to head our way over to Neish Island and come across this amazing submerged, what looks like an oak tree, although it could actually be a worked piece of timber like a really wide oak plank. It's hard to tell because it's covered in boulders, but it looks very old and wonder if it was part of the original causeway. Our good pals Taj and Jules will be joining us today for the loch larking explorations. The area around this loch is steeped in history, surrounded by standing stones and even a Pictish hill fort which overlooks the east end of the loch. The Pictish hill fort is called Dundurn and it punctuates the boundary between Dalriata, the kingdom of the Scots, and Pictland, the kingdom of the Picts. The fort of Dundurn is even mentioned twice in the Annals of Ulster, firstly in 683 when it was held by King Bredi III, and secondly in 889 where it was the location of the death of King Giric. Erin spots her first bottle of the day and uses her lovely new white fins to recover it. What have you got? Let's have a look.
It's broken, but...
Oh, that's annoying. Let's have a look at the glass. Oh, that's nice and early. Oh, that would have been good. On the submerged causeway to Neish Island, we start to find these pieces of stoneware with a white glaze and a interesting top. The initials on one of the top pieces said SRD, and we looked this up and found it was a sort of First or Second World War army issue rum bottle, a sort of utility bottle that was made in Glasgow, and we try and gather as much pieces as we can. And to help us locate them on our return journey, I find this useful anchor underwater and place the anchor next to the shards of pottery, which we'll pick up on the way back and see if we can assemble them together with some glue and make the complete vessel. A tiny little fish appeared to see what on earth was going on and to inspect all these pieces of pottery. The SRD on the top of this bottle stood for Supply Reserve Depot, and that helps us to identify it as a First World War rum bottle. Although we seem to have collected quite a few shards between the two of us, seems like we don't have quite enough to build the complete rum bottle. We are approaching the north side of Neish Island now, and you can start to make out some of the amazing boulders and cobbles in which the artificial island was constructed. Now, it's thought that originally Crannogs and artificial islands in Scotland were Iron Age, but new evidence has suggested that they're actually a lot older and they could be 3,000 years earlier than that, well into the Neolithic period. So it's quite cool to think of all the ancient people right up until the 18th century that were adding and removing and building on these artificial islands and crannogs. Starting to find a few bits of modern debris around here, including this a phony onion bottle. I thought it was an onion bottle when I saw it. I thought it was my lucky day, but alas, some kind of modern brandy. We see a sign underwater. Go and have a look what it says. Quite deep here in this section, maybe sort of 5 meters or so. And it says 5 miles an hour. So it's interesting because the new speed limit on the island says 10. So they must have relaxed the rules. Coming across an amazing section around the island here, absolutely littered with kind of Victorian and Edwardian bottles, and do one of the famous sort of double or triple passes and pick up about 3 bottles. Julie and Erin have found all sorts of interesting bottles around this section of the island, including some Crieff aerated waters, plain whiskey, and even a chemist bottle from Crieff. And here's some Crieff aerated waters. I think it's especially cool on these bottles how the moulding seam goes straight down the centre of the text. Taj is especially chuffed with these amazing amethyst fairy lamps and a clear fairy lamp that have appeared in the Loch Silt.
Beautiful, a beauty.
Very excited to see these fairy lamps cleaned up, as we've never found a piece of amethyst glass before.
Is that a little white wine or something?
It's amber, I think.
That's sick. That's cool.
I know. That was really well hidden.
Done.
Good job.
Thank you.
Erin also found this amazing creme Simon pot, which was invented in the 1860s to nourish the hands of the washerwomen who were working in the Rhone River. And it's a sort of nourishing cold cream, and it was popular right into the 1900s. Down there in the Loch Silt is some kind of interesting ceramic item, and it turns out to be this very curious lady golfer with no head. We think that she's a display for a golf ball, but she also accepts an egg pretty well in her head, so she could be a kind of egg cup. It's definitely one of the most hilarious items we've ever found in a loch, and we can't seem to find any information about it, but if you find any, please let us know if you've seen anything similar. As you can see, it makes a pretty effective egg cup. Suddenly I spot something amazing in the water, a piece of broken glass that looks like the largest bottle I've ever seen. It's in aqua glass, and it's sporting an amazing kind of applied string lip, which probably would have had a protruding section above it which seems to be smashed off. It's incredibly thick, incredibly heavy, and would have been the largest bottle we've ever seen. After consulting some glass experts, we realised that it could be a French utility demijohn that could have contained anything from wine, beer, cider, acid, or even whale oil.
Look at the neck on it.
I know.
So cool. I got a golf ball for the...
I think that's enough loch larking for one day, so let's get out of the chilly water and have a look around the island. We arrive on the island at the boat noost, where boats traditionally would have come in and moored up.
So we've made it to the historical Neish Island, which used to be a crannog, so it means it was made probably in the Neolithic times or even earlier by dropping boulders on a kind of natural feature. And it was a castle in later years, and we'll tell you a bit more about that. So let's have a look around the island and see what we see.
Let's go.
As I said, this artificial island likely has Iron Age roots, but the juiciest part of its history comes in the medieval and post-medieval era. This is the story of a clan rivalry that stretches back hundreds of years. To the north of us, at Killin on Loch Tay, we have the MacNab clan, and here to the south on Loch Earn and surrounding area, we have the stronghold of the Neish clan. The MacNabs were a strong clan holding a strategic castle at Elan Ran, at the mouth of the Lochie. From here they controlled the port of Ran, an old trade heading west up Loch Tay. In contrast to this, the Neish clan were a fair bit smaller in numbers and often accused of unlawful activities. By 1612, the Neish clan still inhabited this island on Loch Earn, living in a tower house or fortalice. At this point they were no better than thieves or brigands, often preying on helpless travellers, looting their supplies. But just before Christmas in 1612, they made a fatal mistake. The chief of the Clan MacNabs wanted to put on a Christmas party for his friends and guests, so he sent his servants and ponies to the town of Crieff in order to pick up supplies for this party. The party had not long passed the village of Comrie, laden with all their supplies, when they came across some Neish brigands. When the Neishes found out that this mobile feast was headed for their enemies, the MacNabs, they stole the lot and took it back to Neish Island on Loch Earn. On arriving back at Neish Island, they passed the wise woman on the roadside. They offered her some of the bounty, but she rejected it, saying, "Beware, sons of Ness, beware of the time when there will be 2 boats on Loch Earn." This was a prophetic warning of things to come. Not long later, the servants arrived back at Elan Ran and told the chief Finlay MacNab what had happened. Finlay MacNab had had 12 sons to 2 wives, the weakest of whom allegedly could pass a Scottish dirk through 3 inches of wood, and the strongest of the sons was called Smooth John MacNab, a powerful, tall and athletic character. All 12 sons and the chief sat around a table that night wondering what to do about this situation. Apparently the second wife of the chief came in and said, "The night is the night, if the lads were the lads." At these rousing words, they all stood up, belted their claymores and ski-and-doos, and made for the fishing boat at Loch Tay. The brothers swiftly sailed along Loch Tay, before picking up their boat, carrying it up the mountains, along the moor, and down through Glentarkin towards Loch Earn. You can imagine the rage in the boys' hearts, toiling with their large boat over bog, moorland, rock and boulder. The brothers arrived on the shores of Loch Earn by nightfall. In the distance they could hear the songs and chants of the Neish clan, who were falling about drunk and gorged on the feast that was meant for the MacNab table. Smooth John MacNab and the boys waited patiently outside the island until the songs of the Neishes had quieted and their fires had burnt down to just embers. John approached the door of the tower house and gave a loud knock. The chief of the Neish clan awoke in horror and said, "Who raps at that door?" And John replied, "Whom would you worst like there?" Neish replied, "Smooth John MacNab." MacNab replied, "If he were hitherto smooth, you'll find him rough enough tonight." And at that, MacNab kicked in the door, sending it flying into pieces, grabbed the MacNeish chief over his knee, unsheathed his claymore, and cut off his head. Meanwhile, the other brothers sat around hurriedly dispatching all the other Neish wretches and putting their drunken slumbers into the eternal slumber of death. It is said that 2 of the Neishes managed to escape the massacre, a young boy and a girl, who were hiding under a bed or perhaps were spared by the MacNabs. Apparently it is from these 2 that the Neishes and the MacNeishes are descended from today. The MacNab boys went round and gathered all the severed heads of the slain Neishes into a sack. They picked up their boat and made for the hills, carrying it all the way up Glentarkin, before discarding it on open moorland somewhere between Loch Earn and Loch Tay. Apparently the timbers of the boat could still be seen up to 100 years ago, before they were destroyed by a peat fire. Dropping the boat, the boys made their way back to Eileanran Castle, where Finlay MacNab was awaiting their arrival. Upon seeing the party approach, he was heard to say, "Fear nothing and dread naught," which has gone on to become a clan motto. Smooth John's stepmother said, "Tonight was the night, and the lads were the lads." She inquired as to what was in the bag that Smooth John was holding. He opened it, and out tumbled the heads of the slain Neishes. After the dust had settled from this gruesome massacre, the Ardvorlich family from the south side of Loch Tay settled on the island, where they turned it into a granary, and it was used right up until the 1700s. Unfortunately, no remains are left of the fortalice or tower house of the Neishes, as it was all recycled into this granary building, and that's what you can see today as we walk around. In front of us here, it's clear to see where the original boat noost or boat mooring used to be. This is where the boats would come to the island with their supplies and so on. It's really great fun to imagine all the characters through history who would have landed in this boat noost, from Iron Age people up to the Neishes, the MacNab murderers, and then all the way up to the Victorian picnickers who left all this hilarious detritus for us to find in the loch. We hope you've enjoyed today's island and historical exploration. We've lots of other historical islands around us here. We're very lucky to be surrounded by them, and each one has an amazing history to tell. So if you'd like to see a kind of series of these sort of island exploration videos, please let us know in the comments below. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as it really supports us and helps us maintain enthusiasm to keep diving in these cold waters. See you next time.